Hey, I'm Nate Savage, and welcome to video 7 of the Blues Guitar Quick Start series. In this lesson, we're going to hit up a little bit more theory and talk about how the blues scale is actually made. If you don't know much about theory, that's totally fine. You don't have to go through this lesson to continue with this series. But if you are curious about more music theory and as far as the blues goes, this is going to be a really valuable lesson for you. As I mentioned before in this series, the blues is kind of a hybrid between major and minor tonalities. It's its own little world, and understanding how that works can be really valuable for your playing. So what we're going to do is build a blues scale. We're going to start with the major scale. The major scale is where all of our chords and scales come from. So that's our starting point, the major scale. We're going to turn that major scale into a minor scale, turn that minor scale into a minor pentatonic scale, and then finally we're going to add one note to the minor pentatonic scale to turn it into a blues scale. Let's get started with the major scale. Like I said, the major scale is where all of our chords and scales come from. And I don't want to get too much into the theory of things right now. I don't want to get too deep into it, but you need to know that the starting point for building a blues scale is to start with its equivalent major scale. In this case, we're going to build an E blues scale, so we need to start with an E major scale. The E major scale is spelled E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp. And again, if you don't know all those note names, that's fine. I'm just going to basically play through a common shape for an E major scale or any major scale. And you may not know the shape, but that's fine too. There are lots of different shapes for the major scale, but this particular one lets you see how changing just a few notes in the major scale can give us our minor scale. Now, the next step to making a blues scale is to turn our major scale into a minor scale. And to do that, what you're going to have to do is change 3 notes of the major scale. What you're going to do is lower those 3 notes by 1 fret or 1/2 step, and that will give us our equivalent E minor scale. The notes you're going to have to lower are the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th notes of the major scale. So I'm just going to play the first octave of this major scale again. So I played 7 notes and then back up to the octave. If you take the 3rd, 6th, and 7th notes of that major scale and lower them by 1/2 step, you'll end up with a minor scale. So let's do that. First note, second note. The 3rd note would normally be here, so we're going to take that and lower it by 1/2 step. 4th note is regular. 5th note is regular. 6th note would normally be here, so we're going to lower that by 1/2 step. And then the 7th note would normally be here. We're going to lower that by 1/2 step. And then the octave. So we went from E major scale lowered the 3rd, 6th, and 7th notes to end up with an E minor scale. And if you look at the shape for this one, you continue the same thing up the 2nd octave, and you end up with this. And you don't have to know this scale shape, but it's really great reference for seeing how moving just 3 notes around can turn your E major scale into an E minor scale. The next step to creating our blues scale is to turn this minor scale, this E minor scale, into a minor pentatonic scale. And it's pretty simple to do this. All you have to do is take away the 2nd note and the 6th note from this E minor scale. So I'm just going to play the first octave of this E minor scale again. And all we have to do is take out, like I said, the 2nd and the 6th notes. So 1, leave the 2nd out, go right to the 3, 4, 5, the 6 would be here, so leave that out, and then 7 to the octave. So when you leave those 2 notes out, here's what it was, and here's what it is. It's a minor pentatonic scale when you leave those 2 out. Now for the 2nd octave of this minor scale, we could take that 2nd and 6th note out again, and we'll end up with the 2nd octave of this minor pentatonic scale. But often we'll take the 2 notes up here that are left and move them back here. That's why you're going to see those notes just jumped from up here all the way back here, so we have a more convenient shape for our minor pentatonic scale. The last step to creating a blues scale is to take that minor pentatonic scale that we just learned and add one note to it, the flat 5 note. So let's go ahead and do that. Here's what we ended up with our first octave of our minor pentatonic scale. Now we just got to add a flat 5 note in there, and I'll just tell you, on the 13th fret of the A string is where your flat 5 note is. So we have to add that note right there with our middle finger to the shape. And if you continue up the shape, the next flat 5 note is right here on the 15th fret with your pinky. And the rest of the shape is the same. So, flat 5, and another one. And you end up with your blues scale. So we started with an E major scale, lowered 3 of the notes in the E major scale, the 3rd, the 6th, and the 7th by 1/2 step to get a minor scale. Took that minor scale, took 2 notes away, the 2nd and the 6th notes, to get a minor pentatonic scale. And then we added 1 note, the flat 5 note, to the minor pentatonic scale to end up with our blues scale. This lesson had a lot of theory in it, I know. I didn't want to overwhelm you, but I did want to make sure that you had the necessary minimum background kind of for blues theory to be exposed to it, just to understand what's going on in the blues a little more. And there are other ways to think about building the blues scale, but relating everything back to the major scales is just a really great way to kind of see the big picture and where everything comes from. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about how to start choosing your notes in the blues scale instead of just randomly playing through scale shapes. If you have any questions, you can leave them here in the comments or email me, Nate@guitarsystem.com. See you around.